listening to She Speaks Talk Radio, where women's words are changing the world.
Hello and welcome to Love Fools with me, your host, Terry Lee Shield, where we are hopelessly devoted to exploring and embodying the universal language of love. Love Fools is brought to you by Love School, where we explore loving self, others, and everything. Join us there for deeper exploration at www.loveschool.uk. Now for today's episode. Hello and welcome to this next episode of Love Fools with me, Terry Lee Shield, and I am exploring and unpacking a question. I started it in the last episode, so if you haven't listened to the last episode, you might want to flip back and listen to it, because it's linked. It's linked to this episode and the next episode. Now, the question that I'm unpacking is, why can't people change? Or more so, why, when we set a goal and then we start out towards it, do we fail to meet it? Or why do we start off well and then something happens and we end up just going back into what we used to do? And this episode today, I'm going to be exploring how other people affect that. So I'm going to answer that question, that general query about humanity and about us, and in relation to how other people affect that. Now, in the last episode, I talked about how we affect that, how as an individual, how we are as an individual human based on our individual responses, how that affects the answer. This episode, I'm going to dive into how other people can affect that. Now, I know you're going to see, because I can hear it all now, is we are responsible for ourselves. We cannot control other people. And I agree. Okay, we are responsible for ourselves and we cannot control other people, but we do affect each other and we can allow ourselves to be controlled by other people, especially if we don't realize it's happening, or if we don't realize the nature of ourselves as part of humanity and how other people can affect us. They can actually control us. And that's what I want to talk about in this episode. I could unpack this a lot because it's a big thread of what I've had to unpack in my own life. And it links to creating systems, because systems generally are made up of more than one thing. They're about how the different parts of something connect and create a function from it. So I want to unpack that a little bit today. By the way, hello, if you're watching on YouTube. I don't know if you know that you can watch on YouTube. There will be a video of this over on YouTube if you want to watch and listen. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate everyone who listens to me babble on, but our show. I find it really, really important. I wish humanity could understand love better, and not just this idea that we have of love like it's a single thing. Love, the idea of love that we have in humanity, is super complex. And this is what Love School is dedicated to. Love School is dedicated to understanding all the aspects of what makes up love. Over at Love School, we explore what it means to love yourself, to love others, and everything. And everything is holistic, okay? Everything we teach over at Love School is based on nature. It's based on our natural way of being, our natural ability to heal, and on the fact that everything is connected and everything is holistic. So holistic meaning mind, body, spirit, myself, others, and everything. That we cannot change one thing without it affecting something else. And if we do change one thing about ourselves, it means we're going to have to explore other aspects of ourselves as part of that change, which I didn't even cover in the last episode. So I might even have to do another roundup episode to cover that. So much to cover unpacking this question, but it's a meaty question and I love meaty questions. I certainly do. And this one's a great one. So let's go back to it. You decided, so what I covered in the last episode is talking a little bit about how in order to change, to set a goal or intention to change, and what I'm referring to there is when we set a goal for something we want to achieve, to improve our career or to improve our health, or to change the family dynamic, something that requires actually a fundamental shift in direction, okay? Something that requires conscious thought, conscious awareness, and an investment of energy. This is what we're talking about, and that kind of change. And I also talked about in the last episode about the juxtaposition of that sometimes often a crisis forces us to change or makes us move into a certain direction, but actually we don't have the energy to sustain that move because it's such it takes such a lot of energy when we're in a crisis to get that initial momentum to move, that when we start healing and we feel better about ourselves, we don't see the value of investing so much energy because where we are seems fine, seems okay. So there's that juxtaposition that goes on in a healing crisis, in when we set a goal, and that often, the way I normally talk about it is to do with healing. Sorry. So if I say healing crisis or anything like that, what I mean, it can be any goal, okay? It can be any goal that you want to set. I should make that clear. But my brain, as with all humans, wants to make things as efficient as possible. So it'll skip out bits of information and assume you understand. So I'll clarify that now. If I accidentally slip up and I just say something like healing crisis or something like that, I mean, when you set a goal, a long-term strategy goal to change your life, that's that point where you've made that decision that I'm referring to. Now, when we do that, it affects the people around us. Okay. We are a social species. Humans make connections. We make connections for many, many reasons. We make connections to keep us safe. We make connections to help us feel better and more validated in our experience. We have connections we don't even make. We produce connections when we reproduced, and we are connected to people we didn't even choose. We're just born into connections. So we are born in a certain place physically and in humanity. So if you imagine all the humans around you, I often like to imagine, this is the best way I can imagine it anyway in my head, is like a river. Bear with us. So all the humans in humanity are a little water particle, if that's the right word, in that river. And wherever we're born, that's where we end up. We have all these connections around us, and we are affected by all them people, and we affect all them people. Because when you think of connection, literally think of it like that. It's one particle's connected to another, and we make up a body of water, okay? So you can have one drop of water on a leaf, and once it drops into a puddle, the puddle, like they all join together, all that water makes a connection, and that puddle becomes a puddle, right? So it's the same with like a family and a community and a country even. When we make connections with other people, it dictates our place in humanity. It dictates how we're connected to each other. And whether we choose that consciously or not, it happens. It's part of how we are in humanity. And making a change often means we're going against the flow of that. So we will, and when we're born, we're programmed by the environment around us, the connections that we have with other people, because that's how we learn. We learn from other people. We learn from other people's previously made choices. And when we're young, we don't really get to decide for ourselves which choices and that we go along with or not. We just have to go along because, well, we're vulnerable and we're being cared for. We're being taken along by somebody else. And those connections keep us safe. They keep us protected, and they keep us part of a group, okay? Which when you're young and vulnerable is really important. It's not as easy to move when you're in the middle of that group, when you're in the protection of that group, when you are in that puddle of your community or your family. It's really hard to move because it moves everything else with you. And as we grow, we're kind of going to expand out, and then we might choose to move into different channels, different ideas. Find your own path, follow your own stream, right? And we're all designed to eventually move out of the mainstream of what is our family or whatever, find our own stream, create our own branches, all right? Like a river does, like a river does. And when we have this crisis point, or when we decide to make a change, the ripple effect of that change can be felt. It can be felt within ourselves and within other people. And then the response from other people, we then feel back. Because often, imagine if we're flowing with everyone and every situation that's been around us, that's how we've got to the point that's taken us to the crisis. If you decide, I suddenly want to change, and you're in the middle, you've got to go out or over or even under or somehow around all the flow that's taken you to this point where you've decided that's a crisis, that's a problem, I don't want to go there, I need to change my direction. So when you start changing direction, you literally alter the fabric of all these connections that you've made, and you have to start making choices about your connections. You have to start changing the connections with other people. This is maybe easier to explain more so if it was more of like a serious, I shouldn't even say serious, but for example, someone with addiction, right? Let's think about an alcoholic. A lot of us probably have dealt with some form of alcoholism in our lives at one point or another, or we can at least see the problem of alcoholism because it's displayed a lot on TV or whatever. We generally understand then if the alcoholic wants to stop drinking, they probably need to stop hanging around with all of the people who they drink with. That is massive, because that means they're going to either have to sever them connections, and then that means they're going out of flow, so they're going to have to be essentially left out alone. And then that means that we lose the protection that we had in the group, all these connections that were holding us in place. We're going to lose that, and that is a risk. So in order to make the change, we actually have to lose something. We're going to have to lose our safety, our protection, and potentially the connections or the type of connections we have with other people. And that's not just if you're an alcoholic, that's with any change. If you want to change your career, you're going to have to therefore change your work connections. If you want to change your health, you're going to have to change how you relate to health in relation to your family and the people around you. Because what happens is, because of this dynamic where people hold us in place, people reinforce our identity. We like to know who people are, how they feel to us. We like life to make life as predictable as possible. And we do this by identifying in certain ways and putting identities on other people. This being that, because I have this identity, it makes me easier to understand, or at least that's how our brain is comprehending it. And the way that identity can play out, and this is why it's dangerous, you should really consider how you identify and who you identify with, because changing identity can be a real process, okay? And it can even be a bit painful, because people identify you as something, and because of the way other people treat or respond or react to you, you identify as something. And changing that identity and how you identify is essentially changing part of the stream of the direction that I'm moving in. What identity does, or part of our identity does, is means I am this in relation to you, and then that either means that we are the same or we are different because of this identity. And what happens with our identity is it has different strands to it. It means because I am this means that X, Y, and Z. Because I'm a woman, this means that I have or can do this, this, and this. And the more this, and this, the more et cetera, that's added on to that idea of identity, that I am this and this means that, the more of a shift it would be if we had to try and then change that identity, because other people who know us reinforce that identity. That's Terry, she is this, and that means that. Yeah, you with me so far? But also, once you're in a group dynamic and those aspects of identity that join us together, this goes, you are this and I am this, and this means that, and we become a we, that then becomes that we do this and we do that. I'm a dancer, and this means that we dance together every Thursday. If I then decide I don't want to dance on a Thursday, I have to lose that connection with my dance partner, for example, or with that dance group. But actually, that dance group might be really invested in having you dancing with them on a Thursday. So it just creates this tension as we try to change or move connections, as people are trying to keep them and hold them into place. And it can be a big risk. This is where all the language comes from, like, don't rock the boat, and I need to pull away, I need some space. I mean, it's true in our physical bodies, but I just really enjoy visualizing it like in this connecting way, like we are holding on to each other as we move through life to make sense of life and each other. And we can move, because we're connected to other people, it moves us in a general direction with them or amongst them. So we are also influenced by the people that we move with, what we're around. So imagine if everyone around you was like, we'll go back to that alcoholism. If everyone around you is drinking every day and you don't want to drink anymore, they're moving in a certain way. So you're going to have to move differently to stop drinking, to get out of that. And in order to do that, we need to lose the influence of other people. So we need to lose the connection, and then also whatever influence they have had on us, potentially in our minds. And this is what is a really interesting part of this conversation that I'm trying to get across. We have subconscious patterns, habits that formulate as we are moving through life. And there's another juxtaposition and healing that comes up when we decide for ourselves that we want or need to change those habits. There's a few things that happen. I've talked about potentially what happens when we are an individual, but in relation to other people, often that means that we have to reprogram. So we have to reject the old conditioning and put new conditioning in. Now, because of all these previous attachments and connections that we've made, we know that the reason we have these subconscious conditioning is because of our past experiences, and our past experiences have been influenced by the people that are around us and that we're connected to. So in order to change, I have to make a judgment that that subconscious pattern is not helpful. And that then creates this conflict, even within ourselves, never mind externally, where because we've attached to somebody, say, who taught us that subconscious pattern, I might decide to stop drinking, but actually, where did I learn to drink? Maybe I learned to drink because of my family. Maybe they liked to drink when they got, in order to celebrate, or they got upset. Maybe I learned to drink from the friends who I hung around, who to them drinking was a whole heap of fun. If I want to reprogram just those two ideas, that drink doesn't have to have anything to do with celebrating or commiserating, and that I don't have to drink in order to have fun, it also means that I have to, part of my mind, devalue that initial programming, because I need to change it. Because you wouldn't want to change a valuable program, right? Because our brain always wants to be efficient. It doesn't want to change a valuable program that was given to us by someone we trusted at a time when it was beneficial. And this is where the failure can start to creep in, because we have to then somehow figure out how we can change that programming. We can devalue the lesson without necessarily devaluing the person that taught us it, if we want to keep them in our lives. And that can be really challenging. That can be where the crisis point in the relationship comes from. That, well, actually, if I'm rejecting this behavior, am I also rejecting the person or the people involved in the situation of how I got there? And that can be a really big dynamic because of the attachments that we have to how we made all our previous decisions, how we've invested in these people, in these different workplaces, for example, in this different friend group, in my family, how much time and effort and energy have I put into my family? And this is what I was getting out. And now I've realized that my family's dragging me in a direction I don't want to go in. It can cause a real stress point. So often it feels like we have to choose, well, actually, do I really want to go in this direction where I don't know where it's taking us? Nobody I know is there. I don't know how the people over there actually act or respond. They don't know me. They might reject me. I might not be good enough for them if I go over into this area where people move in this way that I'm interested and would like to find out about. And I don't want to lose my protection and all these connections I've made with other people because they keep me safe. So we fail or we stop our progress. We don't want to lose our place in society, our place in the groups that we're connected to, in our friendship circles, in our communities, in our families, whatever it is, because we feel like if we change, we have to change. Well, we do. If we make a change, the people around us, the situations around us have to change. So the change actually affects a lot more than just ourselves and our lives. And if we feel at risk of losing that safety and protection that was offered to us by that group, by that way of moving, by that stream, we can actually think it's better just to stick with the old, because at least I know, at least I understand this rhythm, I understand these patterns, I understand how we respond, and actually letting go of all of that and going into this brand new place is really scary. It's really isolating, and I don't feel as protected and safe. It makes a lot of sense when you understand about humans that we are a social species, and it is how we connect and relate to each other in the world. It is how we are a product of the other people around us in every way, from when we're born and how we're raised by our parents and the family around us, to our schooling, to our workplaces, to our friends, to our communities, to our government. Don't worry, I'm going to talk more about all of this in the next episode. It's going to start delving into how the wider world and environment affects us and affects this commitment to change that we can struggle with. But I just think it would be really important for people who are struggling, who are trying to make a change and are just finding it really challenging and not understanding why. It's this idea that we are also changing other people, or we are affecting other people as we change. And sometimes the stress, the strain, the tension of that, the weight of that can be a lot. It can be a lot of energy. It can be a lot of effort. It can be a lot of emotions going on. And it can be easier because, again, anytime we start to panic, our subconscious mind takes over, and the subconscious mind is taking us back to where we started and back to what we know. Okay, so anytime when we're making a change and it amplifies and affects with other people that we have to work through, our subconscious mind wants to kick back in again. And then in order to get out of that panic mode with our subconscious mind, we have to start nurturing ourselves and reassuring ourselves that we are safe. So it can create quite a dynamic, and it can take time to actually change the connections and attachments we have with other people as we move, because it is generally a choice of, you either have to sever an attachment and not see that person anymore. If you're moving in a completely different direction, there's no point staying connected, or we have to stretch it. We have to make that attachment much more flexible, much more able to cope with the distance between us, or the different ways that we now move, or the different responses that we have. We have to navigate how we stretch this connection, how we make the connection work over with new changes, with these new challenges that are between us. But that's what makes a relationship strong. So if you are trying to navigate a change and you're finding that it feels too much because of your connections with other people, or it feels too impossible or overwhelming because you're afraid of detaching altogether, instead consider your relationship a bit more flexible, like an elastic band, that it can move and it can change. We just have to navigate that movement and be aware that we're going to have to navigate that movement as we change. We can't just charge in our own direction and expect other people not to feel that pull when we have invested so much time and energy as humans, all making connections to each other. And we only make connections to each other that we feel are beneficial. Just worth adding as well, like, we're not stupid. Like, we are not stupid as humans. We're not going to make a connection with somebody who is not benefiting us. We generally, once we realize that connection is not beneficial, can see the sense in letting go. But if the benefit is beneficial, like if it's a family or, a parent or an old friend, and there is a benefit to that connection, but actually the change is just pulling you in a really different direction, it can be stressful to navigate that. And just being aware of it and understanding then, so this stress that I'm feeling as I change, it's not directly because of me, it is because I'm making a change, but it could be coming from the people around you. And actually, maybe I need to focus on that relationship, on making sure that relationship can withstand a bit of movement, and deciding how much I want to be connected and attached to that relationship if I'm moving in this very different direction. So I hope that makes sense to everybody. I find this whole subject really fascinating. And I think if you can understand this in regards to your relationships and how we change as individuals, because the opposite is true. If somebody else is trying to make a change, right? I haven't even spoke about it the other way, but if someone else is trying to make a change, we feel the effects and we think, well, what does that mean? Like, we've invested in this relationship, and we invested in this relationship under these terms, how we used to move in this way. And we can feel it when someone makes a change, and we can feel when somebody's wanting to go in a new direction, and we can often try to hold on a bit tighter. But being more flexible actually is how we create the stronger relationships, like a muscle. Being more flexible rather than trying to pull someone in who's trying to change, it can be what becomes damaging in a relationship, stressful. And that can come, like I say, for many reasons. If you suddenly feel like somebody else is changing, there's the underlying worry of like, have I contributed to a feeling? Because again, we know that a change generally comes at a crisis point. Have I contributed to this person getting to that point where they need to change? There can be all sorts going on within us in response to somebody else changing. What does that mean for me? Does this mean I have to change as well? It's just really fascinating to understand the ripple effect of our connection in humanity, and how when we choose to change, it affects other people, and how when other people choose to change, it can affect us. And this is what can cause that dynamic of feeling stuck, feeling like you can't change, feeling like it's better to give up, and feeling but you're never failing. You're always just gaining more perspective and being able to see things from a different point of view. Anytime you move, anytime you make a change, you're always benefiting from perspective. So I have really enjoyed this episode. Thank you very much for listening. I am going to be recording the next episode very, very soon, but it's not going to be released for another 2 weeks. So you'll have to tune back in and listen. And what I'm going to be doing in the next episode is exploring how our environment actually affects our ability to change, and what we can be aware of to overcome that as we choose to change and consciously create our life. Thank you so much for listening. I will see you again on the next episode of Love Fools. Thank you for listening to this episode of Love Fools, where we have been exploring and embodying the universal language of love. Love Fools is brought to you as part of Love School, where we explore what it means to love self, others, and everything. For more information, come and have a look at our site, www.loveschool.uk.